Hello, my name is Nice Player, and I'm here to make another video to, to explain what is the Lord of the Rings book look like. I understand many of you seen the Lord of the Rings movies, and as well as reading the book, but sometimes the Lord of the Rings novel gets confusing. Sometimes it's not just hard, it's complicated. And what's complicated is that what J.R.R. Tolkien had written gets a little confusing. But I myself do confuse as well, and I try to figure out what he's referring to and what object he is saying and what characters are saying. And what I figured it out that Lord of the Rings, but as I read those books, I figured it out when I read these books. And basically, it is sometimes I go as I go and I misunderstood, and so I go read back and go back and read it over again, so I understand what he's talking about. And one thing I figured out is that there are quotations. And quotations is like when a character talks. As you read the books, when you see the quotation is when the character talks in the books in a paragraph, and each paragraph have their own quotations. Each of them don't. And when I figured it out, is that these characters were talking in the novel, that these are the one quotation. Quotation one, I'll call it quotation one. I use it as an example, is that, hey, my name is Nice Player from the library. And that's when when the characters talk in quotation one. And in quotation two, I call it quotation two, is that when a character talks in the novel and they tell you the stories in quotation two, it's like telling the stories inside the story. These are the quotations I'm talking about when the characters talk. And quotation two, the ones down there in the circle, that's when they tell the story. One thing I'm confused is that when Tolkien wrote these books, is that I get a little confused and misunderstood what he's referring. But one thing I figured out is that J.R.R. Tolkien is putting it all together, and when they tell the story, inside the stories it's very smart of him. It was very smart when he put it all things together. And when they show what characters, it's implicating that the stories they are telling are inside the book, and what their other characters look like. That's based on their point of view, and those point of view only follows the Fellowship of the Ring. But I must remind you, these books are obviously a lot more, not obvious, but the books are a lot different than the movies. And Peter Jackson made the movies different. And those in those movies they follow the other characters like Sauron, Éomer, Éowyn, Theoden, and Faramir. But this book is a lot different from the movies. And what I shown you on the list, they shown in the eyes of the Fellowship of the Ring in the novels. The book only follows those characters that are part of the Fellowship. Although Boromir died, but he is one of the major wolves of the books. What I figured is that the Hobbit is a lot easier to read than the Lord of the Rings book. And the problem is I'm still in the second book, and I read a little bit, and I stopped for a while because Lord of the Rings is a lot different and harder than the Hobbit. Because basically, the Hobbit is for the children's book. Basically, originally it's for the children's book, but this is a little bit more of a thought than the Hobbit. Although you read some Game of Thrones books that are now a lot more adult than the Lord of the Rings, but they figure. But that's beyond the point. The point is, Lord of the Rings novel can't be more complicated than the movie itself and than the Hobbit itself. Right now, I'm still in the second book called The Two Towers, and the first part, immediately the spoilers, but the first part follows the rest of the Fellowship after Boromir died. Is Legolas, Gimli, Aragorn, along with Gandalf and Rohan, are dealing with Saruman, and in the second part is where Frodo and Sam encounter Gollum and leading them all the way to Mordor. And that's very interesting to know. It's interesting to know about how books are a lot more different than the novels, than the movies. I mean, don't mean to. Please don't mind please don't mind the confusion and the jumble of my words. So, and what gets interesting me is the books are a lot more precious of the process of how the book, the bills are a lot of the intelligence and doesn't. This is what I need to work on. And if it's a little embarrassing of me that I stumble myself, and what I figured is that my brain needs to catch up, and also it needs a little exercising, so I know what to think before I speak it up for himself. The thing is, the books is interesting to know anything about that, and why I figure that I like reading these books. When I was a kid, is I don't have no less I have less interest in reading those books. And then I read the Left Behind books, and I stopped for a while, and then I started reading them again. And then I read the other books that I started reading on stop. And I used to buy a lot of books at the thrift store, and The Hobbit was one of them. Because they're cheap, and I can get in as many as I want to. And then after I realized that I still have a lot more work to read, that I need to stop buying so I can keep on reading to them and what I didn't finish and what I don't. And I also read the Game of Thrones book, and I also read the Last Policeman trilogy. That's also those beyond the point. What I need is to keep on and I read it non-stop. And what I needed to is you need to do the same of reading the Lord of the Rings non-stop. Like I finished like I did with the Fellowship of the Ring, first book. But but things are complicated. This is what happens when I stop reading, and when I can get back to the reading, it gets confusing at first. But what I figured that I need to keep reading and learn the understanding, so that way I'd be able to read in confidence and stop. And I read this book here. Since this book is taken all together, I had to lay on the bed on the stomach because the books are too heavy, and my arms couldn't take it when I hold it for a while. What my strategy is that I need to sit on the chair and read this like this. And that's what I'm thinking. Why? So I tell myself, why haven't I thought of this before? When I notice that it's books are heavy, I can just sit down for peace and quiet and reading the book just this way instead of the other way, which I lay it down on my stomach on the bed, which is really hurts my back truly. But what's my excuses for stretching more often? So let me know in the comments. Let me know in the comments, and please subscribe to my video and put in the like and ask me some questions. If you got any questions, if you got any concerns, if you have any anything you want to say, let me know in the comments below. So that's have to end of this video, and that's all I have to give you. So, like I said, let me know in the comments so we can explain a lot more better and a lot more understanding of what this video is about. Well, I hope you have a nice day and enjoy